Hey y'all. September 15th, 2025. I guess it's a little crooked. The thing is weird. Here we are. Monday. Well, we went to the library today finally, which was cool. I tried to work on my schedule, like my goals / time / schedule. It's kind of interesting because I don't know if you've ever done too much scheduling. It's something I feel like I've done a fair amount of in my life and tried a variety of ways of doing it. I think I'd like to write a blog on it because it's not as straightforward as it might seem. One thing that inspired me years ago, I guess I should say, was back in Independence, Missouri, where ex-President Harry Truman lived. They have a library, or I guess it is, that's like dedicated to him or something. They have stuff about him in there. They showed like a sample of one of his like presidential schedules for a day or itineraries or whatever. It was like every 15 minutes was something different. And I was like, that's so cool. That's so productive. That's so efficient. Like that's the German part of me, I think. But I tried to do that. I made a schedule, probably in a word table or something, like with every 15 minutes and stuff, and I printed copies and I tried to follow it. It becomes quickly apparent that that's kind of BS because there's too many variables in life. That's too rigid. There's no way the probability of being able to adhere to that schedule is so low. And if you did, you're probably sacrificing your values. Or either that or your top value is the schedule. Zeit über alles, the German time overall. Because it's just too unforgiving. Things come up. Just things go wrong when you don't plan for it, and people interrupt. And I mean, I don't know if some people consider that a pleasant thing, a surprise. Some people would consider it, and this is how I used to be more, as I hated interruptions. I'd be annoyed. And what it's like, a person is an infinitely valuable being with so any interaction with any person has infinite opportunity nested within it. So can a person really ever be an interruption? I don't know. And so I've tried different things, like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think he had a pretty good idea. Like, if memory serves, he kind of talked about it like in terms of roles and goals. Like, roles being like husband, father, employee, for example. And the goals might be something like, okay, as a husband for this week, I want to go on a date with my wife. As a father for this week, I want to have some special time with one of my kids. As a employee for the week, I want to accomplish ABC on this project or something like that, or I don't know. So he'd kind of just have like, and I could be misquoting this. The book is in the van. I wish I could whip it out. Here's like a example week schedule. But you just kind of block. You kind of just put it. You have days, and you have like, it goes down from beginning to end of day. I don't remember there being actual times, but I don't know, because sometimes there are hard and fast times for things, you know, appointments. Maybe some would argue because we live in a Western culture, maybe Native peoples didn't have times. And it sounds kind of silly, but I was doing some reading today on this at the library, and like, the modern clock as we know it was, I think, came about in the 1200s, the late 13th century, I think is what I read. So it's not really that silly. There's like quotes from, might have been Seneca, I don't know. It said something like, something to do with like appointments were very loose because you didn't have, everyone didn't have clocks. There wasn't even what we think of as clocks in existence yet. And so there was, this quote was something about, you know, being patient or something, you know, giving time, because it wasn't such a rigid concept, time. I can't remember the name of the mechanism that was invented in the 1200s. I guess I shouldn't say there weren't, I say there weren't clocks as we know them. It was the gear workings that made clocks basically universally accurate. So like, it was a name for that mechanism. I can't think of it. But the author of this book was saying most people don't even know about this. And it's a huge thing. It's a really huge a world-changing thing. But Stephen Covey's thing was like, you just kind of take your roles and goals and say, okay, this day here, this, you know, that day there, and it could potentially be switched around, you know, like if you had a night to go do something with your kid and they'd be like, oh, I had this conflicting thing I'd rather do. You'd be like, okay, we'll put it out to this night. And so you leave a lot of stuff open, you know, so it's flexible. It's like, and these are the main things you want to accomplish for your roles and goals for that week. And so, and they're based on your values. And, aka what's most important to you. So it is a good way to do it, I think, because it focuses on what is most important to you and not getting caught up in the weeds too much. Not to say you don't need the details of things, but it was more like, let's at least make sure this stuff, that's the first thing. First things first. And he talks about a illustration in the book, like where a professor, or maybe it was him that did it, because he was a professor. He's talking to his class about time or something, and he has like a big jar or whatever, and he puts in make sure I get this right. He puts in water, then he puts in sand, then he puts in pebbles, and then he has a bunch of larger rocks, which can individually fit in there, and there's no room, it's full. But then he does it, I think he does it again or something. He puts in the bigger rocks first, so there's spaces between these rocks and stuff. And then he pours in the pebbles, and then the sand, and you kind of thing, get stuff down in there, and then water. He says the big rocks are the biggest or aka most important things, and the water is the least important thing. Not to say water's not important, it's a metaphor or a symbol for that. So I thought that was cool, and that's how a schedule works. It's like, let your schedule be the big rocks. That's the main thing. And then the rest of it can kind of take care of itself, just be diligent and stuff. But you don't want to get to the end of your week or your month or your year or your decade or your life and be like, crap, I never got the big rocks in. So that was kind of his paradigm, and he didn't create this stuff. I don't think. I don't know how much of it he may have, but I think in his book he pretty much claims this is the things that he discovered in his studies. And what's some other? Tony Robbins. He's interesting. He talks about the RPM method: results, purpose, massive action. So he's like, you got to be results focused, because otherwise you're going to be you're going to waste a lot of energy and time and resources. The more specific the result for whatever you're engaging in, the better, because the less resources you'll waste getting it. Results, purpose, and that's like the why. Like, why am I wanting this result? The why. Like, he's big on that. Like, what's the purpose? It's like, don't just say you want $1 million. It was like, why do you? Because you can do something great with it for yourself and for people you love. Massive action plan. And that's where he gets into just going after it and using every resource you can, and mainly utilizing coaches, people that have achieved results that you'd like to have and stuff. So he thinks he and I don't want to misquote anybody, but that's how I recall it. Like, that was the essence of how he talked about doing, like, I don't want to say scheduling, but like approaching goals. The result is the goal, and I know one thing he did in a book I read, he's like, he kind of basically just encouraged you to dream big, and he's like, what would you like to have if you just become a kid again and just think totally free and wild. You know, what things would you like to have? What places would you like to go? What people would you like to meet? And just don't put any limits on it. And then, you know, he had it go into like, I think like 10 year, 5 year, and 1 year or something. And then you take the RPM and you start working towards those. And I don't think he talked about it like a calendar thing, but I don't know that I never took any of his paid for classes, so I don't know if he does that or not. But so, you know, that's kind of interesting. It's not real time bound. Like, I know he just he has so much energy. Like, he does so much in a day, especially like when he's doing his seminars. He'll maybe get like, he'll do like a multiple day seminar, and he'll maybe get like just a few hours of sleep between days, and he does a lot of these throughout the year, and he talks about energy, you know, and kind of how you have that, and it's interesting. But so that's one of some of the approaches. There was another book I can't remember the name of. I feel stupid, I can't remember. I read it like a little over a year ago, I think, and the concept he had was like, oh, and Tony Robbins uses this too. He calls it chunking. Like, do chunk like tasks together. And this book was kind of like that. It was interesting. They used like a theater term. They referred to off stage, on stage, and backstage days, I think it was, or something. Like, on stage was like you're executing the work. Off stage was like a days to recover and recuperate, and backstage was like doing behind the scenes work or something, you know. So like if you were a social media influencer, you'd on stage would probably be the videoing, shooting the video, doing the thing that you're capturing footage of. Backstage would probably be like editing, and off stage would be like could include things like days off, you know, recreation, or could include maybe education or something. Or I don't know if that might be backstage, or it might just could be things other than social media, you know, enriching yourself and stuff. So I've tried all these things, and I don't feel like I've consistently stuck with them necessarily. And in this past little bit here, we kind of just had a set schedule, which I was feeling good about, you know, and it was simple, and I was accomplishing new goals with, you know, writing and door dashing and doing social media posts and running, I guess. But and now recently I've been feeling the need to do more stuff that is important to me, that I guess I'd been neglecting a bit. But yeah, I've been struggling with, like, how do I do all this? And I've struggled in the past with it, but it's like, you know, the best I've ever come up with is like, you just kind of got to let things go to some extent and not be too rigid, because you can't do it all. And it's better to do as much of it as you can and not give up on it, than to just totally, you know, scuttle the things that are important to you. So I was writing on that today, and I came up, I was trying to be open-minded, and I came up with some weird concepts. Well, first of all, so maybe I look less weird, I want to introduce this concept that I heard from someone else. He's a guy on social media called Ed Milet, and he came up with this idea of like 3 days in one. Like he said, this was a big key to how he got real wealthy. He would consider and I don't know that this is exactly what he said, but the morning was like a day, the afternoon was like another day, and the evening was like a third day. And so he would just, with just that kind of mindset change, he would like cram 3 days of stuff into one day compared to the people he was competing against. I guess it was like a sales position. And it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. I've toyed with that before. I did tend to get more done. Try to, quite a bit more productive, but it also seemed unsustainable. So I don't know. I'm not saying I just scuttle it, but that's so I say that to say today I thought, what if you could, I was like, it seems like more stuff than I can do in a day or even a week maybe, or it's like, what if there was like a time frame between a day and a week? Obviously you can say every other day or every third day or every fourth day, but that, to me, that paradigm it's not as useful, like as if you had a dedicated concept. Like a week, yes, it's 7 days, and it's a word that means 7 days, but it's like, and it's a row on a calendar, but it's like, what if rows on calendars were 2 1/3 days or something? AKA, I know I keep saying AKA, sorry, a third of a week. It's like, would that help us organize differently, think differently? That kind of thought, like, what if there was other things? So I like came up with this term. A 2 1/3 days is a dake, D-A-Y-K. Between a day and a week, and there's 3 dakes. I don't know why I'm laughing, because it just sounds so absurd. There's 3 dakes in a week. And then I went further, and 2 dakes would be what did I say? A wake, like a blend of a week in a day, whereas the dake is a blend of a day and a week. I don't know. So a wake would be 4.66 days, and then and like, how you could say today, you could say to dake, or you could just say this dake. But and I stretched it out, just figured I might as well keep going. It's like, what if there's a fortnight? You could have something between a week and 2 weeks. It could be a tweak night. So I'm sure there's better names for these things that someone could come up with, but that was my working terms. And I stopped there, but then I did think of that Ed Milet concept. I was like, so like a dake, a wake, and a tweak night could kind of expand time, in a sense, is how I view it. Like it's like, kind of the thought is, okay, I can't do X every day, but maybe I could do it every dake. I'm cracking myself up. So, or I couldn't do Y every week, but I could maybe do it every tweak night or something. And so, so I don't know. But then, so I thought about the Ed Milet thing, and I was like, well, what if you want to compress time? Because that's kind of, to me, what he was doing. Like 3 days in one, for example. It's like, okay, to be like a Monday morning could be Mormon, and like Mormon, and then the afternoon could be like Aftman, and then Eveman, or like more twos or F twos or Eve twos. If my sister sees this, she's gonna die of laughter, I think. Or my mom, for that matter. But I feel like I'm like, this is something that Steve Carell's character in The Office would come up with. So I'm sitting there feeling pretty stupid. I'm just laughing at myself inside because it's in this quiet floor of the library. And but I'm just running with it. It's like, what the heck? And I try to plan out like the next week. You know, break it down into these categories, and I don't know. I didn't get a sense that it was helping that much. And I said, well, I'm going to try to look up try to do some reading. We decided to take the day off of door dashing because Monday and Tuesday are the least profitable days. And so, and Nikki was in the zone, in the flow, working on a video on Canva. And she was like, yeah, I'd like to keep working. And I was like, yeah, let's just do it. So we had a lot more time, and the library's open later now too. So I found some books, and they were actually really pretty dang good. I was surprised because, you know, time management a lot of times just can seem so cheesy, like the stuff I'm coming up with. And you know the saying, everybody has the same 24 hours, but it's like, is that really the right way to think of it? So like the first book was called The Economics of Time. I pulled maybe a couple useful quotes out of there, but it was like a real economics book. It was based on some a little more heavy math and stuff, like, so I didn't have a whole lot of time at that point, so I didn't go too far into it. Another one, I can't remember the title now, but it was kind of like an economic approach to it. It wasn't just a cheesy bestseller time management. It was like scholarly. This guy had tons of sources and was citing the ancient Greeks and the biblical, the Bible and church fathers, and you know, all this stuff, and Enlightenment thinkers. It was pretty deep, pretty cool. But he kind of addressed some of the concepts that I was talking about. Like, well, he talked about Newtonian time. Like how Newton was basically had the concept that time was fungible. And I had said that when I was thinking about this and writing notes. I was like, it's time. I almost typed time is fungible. It's like, that doesn't seem quite right. It's flexible, because fungible is a little different. It's like it's the same. Like, it means like essentially every hour, every unit of time is the same as another. And I guess the common consensus now, at least because of Albert Einstein's discovery of theory of relativity, it's not true. And I guess in other ways people are saying it's not true. And that made me feel a little less stupid that a book in the library kind of addressed this idea of, well, before I'll say this. He said, like, in ancient or classical Greece, Egyptian, and Roman culture, that the daytime and the nighttime was both 12 hours, regardless of the time of year. So literally each hour was worth more or less depending on the time of year. So like if you were in the winter and you had 9 hours of daylight, you'd have roughly like 1 1/3. Each hour would count as like 1 1/3 hours. I'm just making a drink here. I think I'm a little dehydrated. And so, and it really, when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because like back then you needed light. Daylight was a bigger deal. Yeah, you had candles and lamps and stuff, but good luck, plowing a field with candles. So like, or without a moon, So you, in a sense, there's certain things you just had to get done every day, and you had less time to do it when the daylight was shorter per day. And so each hour you did have to get more done per hour. So it kind of really makes more sense, really, in a way. And that was how the world was. And these societies were advanced. So that kind of made me feel better, because I was like, that was the literal concept of compressing or expanding time that I just made silly terms for, but it was the same concept. And yeah, it was interesting to read these books. I couldn't read them in more depth, unfortunately, but that book, what was his conclusion was kind of like, he used it, polychronicity. To me, it seemed like just a fancy word for multitasking. And he said the main thing with that is and I guess some research shows this, is you're better off having, he said, better off having multiple time horizons, working with multiple time horizons. And I guess he meant with different projects and stuff. I didn't fully understand that. So like, I think he may have been saying you should be working on like short-term, mid-term, long-term goals roughly at the same time, And that kind of makes sense. It's like the now, the tomorrow, and the next year kind of thing almost, or whatever variation of that. And then he also said to be, what was it, like, I think it was like flexible. I don't have my notes in front of me. Well, one of them was, he titled that sub-chapter Creating Time. And he talked about like the 7th year sabbatical, like in the Old Testament, how this wasn't a Christian book either, but like how every 7 years you're supposed to not do any work, no animal, or you're not even supposed to grow stuff. So like everything is supposed to rest. He's like, basically the concept of creating time, I think what he meant was just kind of stop and don't focus on productivity, because, well, in economics there's the concept of diminishing marginal returns. Like at some point if you just keep going and faster and faster, more, you'll incur a cost that will exceed the benefit. So I think that was the basic concept there. Is like, you got to build in time to step back and be like, not do this stuff. And I wonder if I'm not in that kind of a place, or a micro version of that right now, because this week I've just been kind of like feeling like my brain is resetting or something. And so that was interesting. I wish I could remember that third. I think it maybe had to do with the idea of expanding or compressing time. And because like he talked about how like time, people used to look at time as like epochs of time versus just like the rigid time that we know in today's world. And I think it may have been more about being flexible with how you view time. And it's interesting because like I try to keep a running schedule or plan, and you know, so you have specific distances to run on specific days, specific intervals apart. And you know, I'm kind of like, last night my heart rate variability kind of tanked and so my watch is like, maybe you should rest today. And I was supposed to do my long run for this period, and that's an important cornerstone run, but I don't like putting it off. But it's like, I'm not feeling it, and it wasn't convenient. We were there at the library, and so I guess I still actually, as the start of this video, was contemplating on maybe doing part of my long run after this. It's like 9 o'clock probably, 9:04, but I don't know, like I'm feeling tired. Like this talking is actually kind of wearing me out. So it's like, you know, in one part of it, you feel like, oh no, I'm getting behind and I'm not gonna get to my goal, my running goal. But it's like, I think you got to be more flexible than that, you know. It may not have to be a weekly distance goal. It could be like a tweak nightly running goal. And that's kind of what I think I'm kind of doing without even really intentionally making it that way. Like I was thinking of maybe doing the long run tomorrow, possibly, depending on how my vitals or whatever look. And because there's a lot more variables involved too, you know, like diminishing marginal return. My heart rate variability is telling me like, hey, maybe don't run right now, especially the long run of the week. So we'll see what my heart rate variability does overnight. But the thing with heart rate variability is they say it's average. You know, one particular day doesn't necessarily mean it. But that was enough last night to take my 7-day average down. But if I have a great heart rate variability tonight, sorry, my nose is so dry. Maybe my average will come back up, maybe to the normal range, and maybe I could do a part of a long run tomorrow. You know, you gotta be flexible, I think, because you can end up making yourself worse off. You know, it's like people that run through injuries. Kind of, you know, they don't alter anything. You're gonna just make it worse, and then you're gonna really be sidelined for longer than you would have been otherwise. So that's the kind of thing. So it was kind of interesting. I had a couple other books I didn't get to read, review it all, and like I wanted to make some significant progress towards blog today, but I don't feel like it did. I guess all the stuff I was writing and reading about schedules was my intent to write a blog on it, but I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere with it. I was just getting more confused than anything. But I guess a blog could just be about a journey on trying to understand time management. You know, it's interesting. I read a book a long time ago decades ago, probably at this point, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was a Christian book, I think, and it was kind of about like modern principles. I don't remember how it applied to Christianity, but like versus traditional principles. It's like in the Industrial Revolution world or whatever, we kind of just force things, try to control everything. And of course there's benefits to that, but there's a cost to it too, I think. But like, that used to be like, okay, we'll have the planting season, and that's dependent on the weather, and the growing season, the harvesting season. These things are all dependent on nature, and you can't really make anything happen, at least traditionally. Just kind of what happens is what happens, and you got to roll with it. It's more of a dance or of a ebb and flow type thing. And I think that can be true with time too. It's like if you're listening, our Industrial Revolution type thinking is like, I don't care if I can't breathe, I'm still got to do my long run. To some extent. I guess that's not true of everybody, but it's like, maybe be a little more flexible, a little more easygoing, a little more riding the wave. It's like when you plow a field with a combine, you go. If you're having a yoke of oxen pull a plow, you're not in control of nothing. Not much. You got to work with the oxen in a huge way. You can't just make them do what you want them to do. So you kind of got to work with what's going on and what your body's doing, what the world around you is doing, and that's maybe a more harmonious, more productive way to achieve your goals. Oh, I remembered the third thing he said was, oh yeah, and I guess I did say that, to expand and compress. He specifically said, like, sometimes you do want to, because he talked about going too fast. He's like, you can definitely do that, but there is a place for that. You do want to go fast. And there was a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, I think by Daniel Kahneman, I think. And he talked about the benefits of how you need both. And I'm a slow thinker for the most part. But I know a lot, our culture today seems to be like fast, efficient, productive, at least in the business world. And you end up with problems. I saw tons of that in the industry I worked in. Like, I produced less units, but the value of what I produced was arguably infinitely greater because it was insurance underwriting. I avoided, which the purpose of is to reduce, mitigate risk to the company. And I focused on reducing that risk significantly, and the other people were just trying to get revenue. They were underwriters, but really they were behaving as sales, and that was ridiculous because then no one was really underwriting those things. And then what would happen is they'd file a claim, and it was like, whoops, everything's wrong. And then guess who it went to? And then the real underwriting happened, which should have happened up front. And so that was what he was talking about. And to me, that's kind of compressing and expanding time. It's like, yeah, I took that much longer than everybody to do this thing, but in comparison to the value that I added, it was like they were getting a lot more out of me, way more out of me than the other people, really. Even the other people were generating more revenue. So that was the other thing. So it was like address multiple time frames, goals at once, be able to switch between slow and fast activity, and take time to step back and recuperate. And that goes hand in hand with Stephen Covey's 7th Habit of Sharpening the Saw, which that's such a good book. But take time off to sharpen yourself, to keep yourself, maintenance the machine, essentially. So I don't know how this is all going to look for my schedule. I kind of made a schedule for this week, and I used the concept of a couple dakes. And a 3 dakes, which is a week, and a wake. But I don't know if I might use that compressed idea of more than one day within a day. Like tomorrow morning is more twos. And we'll see. But I'm trying to be more flexible. You can't just force everything, and if you do force it, you're going to end up with problems, in my experience. So there's a lot I want to do, but I'm trying to be a little more rolling with it, and letting things breathe, at least for now. And then there might come a time where I compress time. I think for right now, I'm supposed to maybe expand time a little more. There are some hard things that you can't do that with. Like I have to make a certain amount of money. And that's one. So that is kind of where I'm at. So I don't know. We'll see what I do tomorrow, what that looks like, what I talk about. But kind of trying to take a more let it breathe approach right now. Like, let's see what happens. Like I've taken longer. This is one of my longest vlogs. I'm trying to chill more. I do worry about the storage saying, oh, you're out of storage, but I'm trying to not think about it. But I am at about a stopping point anyway, so I pray for you guys. Be blessed. And thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. That's the plan. Good night.